Hello, everybody. This is Paul Carruthers. I'm the communications manager for MotoAmerica, and this is our weekly off track podcast. It's actually the first one we've done in a few weeks that we haven't done from the racetrack. Sean Bice, how are you?
Hey, I'm doing great. It's good to be back from Pittsburgh. I we talk about Road America being one of our favorites, and the fact that we got to do two rounds up there. And boy, I'll tell you, Pittsburgh sure is a favorite for mine. And I mean, I have to say it's because it's exactly 3 hours and 1 minute from my door to that track. So that's pretty awesome. It's not as close as what Mid Ohio is, but I think Pittsburgh has seriously supplanted Mid Ohio as an awesome track in this part of the country, and I know a lot of Ohio fans go over there. But we had a massive crowd who seemed to be doing a good job with their social distancing. But the place is big enough that you can get a lot of people there. But it was a good one, right?
Yeah, it was really good. And your point about Mid Ohio is actually a good one because I guess it would draw the same people or a lot of the same people. And you would know that you're from back there. And like you said, it was a 3 hour drive for you. But I think just the kind of overall feeling that that track has reminds me a lot of Mid Ohio once you mentioned it. The way that the fans are on that one hill. And, I remember Mid Ohio being packed with people on the grass hills there as well. It kind of had that same sort of a feeling to it. But yeah, I've liked pit race since we started going there. I like the location, and again, I think considering that we've only been there a few years, I think the fan base has already grown, and people are starting to put that thing on their calendar. When we get back to normal, if normal's actually ever a thing again, these people can start to plan on a given weekend, much like they do at Road America. I think that's what helps Road America so much is that it's always that last weekend in May, first weekend in June, and people can set their calendar around it.
Yeah, and we as you pointed out, I mean, we looked at some of the photos that a lot of the photos that Brian J took of the riders from certain angles. It's exactly what you were saying. You could see, in the background blurs of them, lining the fence, just like you're saying, like the way it was at Mid Ohio. And we went up on the hill. I guess that's what you call it, that one observation area. And I was embarrassed to say I hadn't even been up there in the time we've gone there. And once you took me up there, I was like, oh my gosh, this is just a natural sort of perfect place because you can see them coming off a turn or off this front straightaway and into the first turn, and then they double back and you can see more of it. Just the fact that you can see so much of the track from that area, it's no wonder that so many people were up there. But it almost felt like being at a county fair. I mean, just walking around, with all the people, and everybody seems to be so happy and enjoying themselves. So it was so cool.
Yeah, and you never know. I mean, at the races that we've had fans at, you just never know if they're going to feel comfortable coming out or if they're going to stay away. But man, it sure seems like a lot of people came out and I think they all had a lot of fun, and I think they were all doing the right thing and following the right practices and going about their business, but at least having a weekend of good entertainment. And I'm sure it's nice to I know it's nice for me to get out and go to those races and enjoy that. It's funny. It's like, I mean, obviously I've been doing this my entire life, but and I was just thinking about it this morning. It was like on Sunday, I can't imagine. I must have watched like 10 motorcycle races because I got up in my hotel room early and to watch Joe Roberts in Moto 2, and then had my laptop and got to the track in time to watch Moto GP, which I never miss, and I try to watch it either live or as close to live as I can through their live streaming package. And then after MotoGP ended, then I was able to watch Gerloff in the World Superbike race. And then before you know it, our 5 races started. So I was thinking back, I'm like, man, you watched a lot of motorcycle races that day. And then I think back of like how many motorcycle races I must have seen in my entire life, and it's
Oh
got to be
yeah,
mind-boggling because it was naturally. I mean, it was ever since birth, basically. So, but it's
right.
it's funny how you just I mean, watching I just really like watching motorcycle races, and it never gets old for me. And we've had some good ones and we've had some less than good ones this year, but it's still motorcycle racing, so I can understand why people want to get out and enjoy it.
Yeah, so let's talk about this one thing, Paul. I'd love to get your perspective on this because I'm sure it's similar to mine. So we have seen so far this year that Cameron Beaubier seems to be on another plane in Hono's Superbike, and he's except for the one mistake he's made, he's been perfect, and he's just dominating the field with big gaps. And of course, now we're starting to have some fans that have even forwarded the opinion that it's somewhat boring, and I fail to be able to see that. I understand about what's going on there, but I think our TV does a good job on this. I mean, obviously the battle with Tony and Josh Heron and Kyle Wyman was a good one to see, and I'm surprised to hear people say that. And I don't know whether it's people that are watching it on TV. I don't think it's people that are there, because sometimes in my opinion, it almost doesn't really matter where the leader is on the track and how much of a gap they have, because there's you get up to the back markers, there's some strategy there in passing them, and it just seems like there are battles further back. There's always something in a race that's interesting to me. What's your perspective on that?
Yeah, I mean, I think they've. I don't want to say that they've become spoiled with our Superbike class in the last few years, but they probably have because we've had numerous winners. We've had Cameron who's struggled at times, and Tony's excelled at times, and vice versa. So it's just been more of a mix than what we have this year. So I think the word boring is a bit strong, but I can see their point a little bit because anytime you have the same winner over and over, I mean, it was starting to even with the incredible races that MotoGP's had, um, you would hear whispers of the same thing with Mark Marquez, and now that he's out, people are saying, "Oh, MotoGP's never been better because the dominant guy or the guy that everyone knows they have to beat every weekend is gone." So it kind of gives everybody new hope that any of them can win. And I think Cameron's kind of taken that away this year because he's on such he obviously loves the motorcycle that he's riding. He feels incredibly comfortable on it, and he's very confident. And every time he goes out, he leads the session, and it seems like from the very beginning, everybody else is racing for second place. But I think there's another. I mean, I think this happens every once in a while where somebody steps up and the other guys don't step up with him or to the same degree. And so what you end up with is somebody that's dominating. And I think what you can do as a fan during those times is actually appreciate the guy that's doing it. And if you watch him, like if you watch highlights of him or slow motion or, uh, just the TV broadcast when they're just showing Cameron on with the form that he's on right now, it's like it's actually fun to watch one guy that's not racing with anybody. I know it's different, but if you watch it for what it is, for somebody that's truly at the top of their game, uh, you know, it gives you a different perspective on it. But yeah, I mean, he's on a roll. One thing I thought that was good about pit race was I thought they were closer. Well, they were closer. Obviously, in
Right.
qualifying, a lot closer. And in the race, Gagne in that second race was keeping him honest until he had the clutch problem and faded back. And even Stoltz was closer to the lead on Sunday than he was on Saturday. You don't know how much Cameron has in reserve. I have a feeling that the way things are going for him right now, if they stepped it up, he could step it up more. Um, I just think it's going to be one of those years where you just have to fully appreciate what he's doing because he's definitely on top of his game, and it's those other guys got to keep firing off and they got to keep working. And I mean, I would like to see him actually be a little. I don't want to say mad, but it's like I don't know. I like to see when guys aren't happy when they're getting second and third.
Yeah.
And I think that's one
Well,
thing that's one thing that's kind of attracted me to Dominic Doyle a little bit, and kind of keeping my eyes open for him and watching him a little bit more. Is I like the fact that when he's on the podium and he got second or he got third, you can see that he's like seething. You know what I mean? He's
yeah.
like it's bothering the hell out of him because he believes that he's good enough and he believes that he should be winning. So he's made a few mistakes and he knows he's made mistakes, but those it bothers him. To me, it's like Scott Russell always said, if you show me a good loser, I'll show you somebody who loses a lot.
Right.
So
That's good.
I actually kind of like to see when guys don't like losing because I think those are the guys that end up winning.
Yeah, and I'm not saying it's the same people that are now saying some things about bringing up the word boring with regard to our superbike class, but you see so many fans that talk about the supposed golden era of AMA superbike racing when Mladen was racing and when Spies was racing. Well, you know how that was. Their gaps were even bigger than Cameron's, and it was just it was, if you want to put it in those terms and measure it by those measurables, I guess, then that was a snooze fest too. Although I watched that era too, and there was a lot of stuff going on further back in that pack that I enjoyed seeing. And regardless of the domination that they showed, people still look at it as being, oh, this was the greatest time ever. And there are going to be fans that are going to probably in the future say this was the greatest time ever, because if you go down through our 5 classes with everything that's going on, it's there's a lot of compelling stories. But one more thing about Cameron, I wanted to ask you about. I know he's aware of the fact that he's 4-time champion, probably going to be 5-time champion. Do you think it's hard to gauge his situation, and he's made it pretty clear in the past that he likes being home? But Josh Hayes brought up something to me that I think is interesting, and it's the fact that the way Yamaha's team has evolved, and now it's a supported team. Josh has said it's probably a situation where Cameron's not going to necessarily make more money the longer he races. And so I wonder if he's getting to the point. Do you think maybe he will entertain the idea of moving up to World Superbike or something next year? I mean, obviously, Michael Vandermark, there's an opening there, and it's with Yamaha, and he always said he wanted to be with a top team. And I don't know if he's intentionally making a statement about that, but do you think that's in his mind at all?
I would like to think it is, uh, because the thing is I mean I think almost all of us would want Cameron to try that and to go do that.
Yep.
But the bottom
Yep.
line is you and I can want it all day long, and he's got to want it to actually make it work. Um,
Right.
and if he does want it, he's going about his business the right way this year, because I think he's showing the rest of the world that the quickest way to get to Europe is to dominate your series in your homeland. And now he's actually doing that. Winning by a second or half a second and then getting third by half a second or 2 seconds or 1 second. That's great. And that's when it's absolutely not boring and the fans love it. But for somebody who wants to go somewhere else beyond MotoAmerica, then he has to dominate. And that's what he's doing this year. He's winning races, and he's not winning them by half a second. And he's not getting thirds. He's not getting fourths. He's not even getting seconds. The only time he hasn't won is because he crashed out of the lead. So I would like to think that he's entertaining thoughts of that. But again, as much as well as I know Cameron, I honestly couldn't tell you what he really
Right.
wants. What he really wants. I think he plays it close to his chest, and yeah, I don't know. It's just weird. You just don't know, because and I just don't think he's ever gotten the real opportunity that he thinks he could be successful with. But I think
Right.
with Vandermark leaving, if they truly are interested in him going to that team, then that that can't be an excuse anymore, because that is the team. And I'm sure they would pay him the money that he needs. I would imagine. I mean, I don't know what the pay scale is like comparative between what he makes now and what he would make there. But honestly, if he doesn't do it this year and he does get that offer, then he truly just doesn't want to do it.
Yeah.
And that's fine. Everybody should at that point just back off and leave the kid alone. Um,
Yeah.
because ultimately it's his decision. And, if I got offered some wonderful job to go live in, well, I don't want to, I almost said Ohio, but that would be rude there. But you know
That's
what I mean?
okay.
It's
Try
like,
it.
if I got offered some incredible job and it required me to go live in Europe, for 6 or 8 months, I probably wouldn't want to do that at this point in my life. So everybody has to do what they need to do to make themselves happy. And I'm sure he feels it, because I know his fans want him to go, because his fans believe in him as I do. And I think right now, the way that he's riding, if they gave him a motorcycle similar to what he's on now, I think he would consistently run in the top 4 or 5 at every single round.
Yeah, I do too. And I mean, he's got a yardstick there with his former teammate Garrett Gerloff. I mean, obviously, I think he thought, well, let's see what Garrett can do. And, Garrett's doing admirably so early in the season for not knowing those tracks. And, I'm sure that that bike is maybe a little behind the lead bikes there, within the same brand. And it'd be cool if, Garrett raced another year with that team he's with now, and Cameron was on the other one, and it just would be a great situation not only for America, but I think for Yamaha in World Superbike and also World Superbike in general, because we'd be going from virtually nobody really in that series to two of them who were teammates and are really did some great things in America. So it just feels like maybe Cameron's like, wow, little baby Garrett, look what he's doing. Maybe I ought to try it out myself. So hopefully that's a little bit of pressure for him to do it. I don't know. We'll
And
see.
honestly, with the way that he's adapted to the motorcycle that he's on now, that's got to make him feel 100%. Because I don't think last year he was ever truly comfortable on the bike, and I think that's why that that's got to be the big difference between him dominating now and him not dominating last year. Um,
Yeah.
Some of the other guys maybe having a few more struggles than what they're used to, but I think it's more him stepping up with the motorcycle that he's on than those other guys just not performing well. If that makes sense. Because I
Yeah.
don't think that's the case. I mean, if you look at lap times, everybody's going faster. So
Yeah. And, one other aspect of that situation with Cameron's team, and we've always remarked about this in the early goings of our race weekends or in the mornings in practice sessions, is we all know Richard Stamboli's a little bit of a mad scientist, so he seems like he's always trying to move the ball forward with trying stuff, and they have their share of little things happening during practice sessions or whatever, and the situation with Gagne's clutch notwithstanding, that could have probably happened, just by, I guess you could even say, user error on frying it to get a good start, but everything all comes good for Cameron when it comes time to race, or really even in Super Pole. So whatever they're doing to try some different things with setups or parts or whatever they're doing, they get that out of the way, and then he just goes out and wins races. So they don't seem to be jinxed by experimenting, I guess,
no,
on a weekend.
I think they've got to continue to push things because
Yeah.
you got to continue to push things and go faster because you never know when something's going to click with somebody else, and you don't want to be caught on your back foot. And you don't want to in other words, you don't want to make it so that your limit has already been met. You should never
Right.
meet your limits. You got to keep pushing forward, and obviously when you're trying new stuff, sometimes it doesn't work. I think Cameron in the press conference on Sunday said that they tried all kinds of stuff on Sunday morning, um, and it didn't work. So you know what your setting was, then which that you were comfortable on, and you went fast. So it's easy to just go back to that. So there's no harm in especially with the way that he's been dominating. I mean, you can waste a session here and there, uh,
Right.
trying to get the thing to even go faster because you want to be ready for when somebody else does go faster, and you need to be faster. So
Yeah, and I sense that because of that team and the way it's structured, and it's not like the unofficial factory team anymore. It's out from under the race shop, specifically within Yamaha and Keith McCarty. And it seems like Richard's a little bit more of an experimenter than maybe Keith was, and is willing to try some things. I also think he has a little bit more freedom to not only think outside the box, but go outside the box in terms of working with partners, technical partners, or whatever. It's something that Yamaha couldn't do as much because they were more corporate. I think it's a little more freed up. It seems like that's the impression I get. Do you get that as well?
yeah, he can probably do pretty much anything he wants, and I mean, the guy is no dummy. I mean, he knows what he's
Right.
doing, and I think he knows a lot about the electronics, and I think he's been able to step the electronics up to the point where Cameron has a lot more confidence in him than what he had before. And I mean, in this day and age, I think that's a big part of the equation. So I just think it's working really well right now for him, and everyone always is, the big question is, and honestly, if you look at the difference between this year and years past, and people saying boring, not boring, the thing that's made the difference is that we can't right now we can't count on Tony Elias being there at every single race. And you could always
Right.
do that before. Like when I would watch races before, and I know you'd be the same, and I know the fans were the same, it didn't matter if he was on the third row, the second row, the first row. It didn't matter if he was fifth. If he was fifth on the second lap, you still had a belief that he was going to go forward and would challenge for the win. Whether or not he got it or not just depended if it was his day, but he would challenge for the win no matter what. And I think not having Tony being able to do that at this point in the season is what made is what making it a little bit more, quote unquote boring, because
Right.
the races between him and Cameron were just, you could always count on it. And then there'd be a third guy every once in a while or a fourth guy every once in a while. And that's what made it what it was. And it's not that way anymore. And I think a big part of that is just that, Tony hasn't had the results yet that we're used to him having. And, and I'm of the belief that that could turn around at any time. I don't know what's going on there. I don't know what's going on with Tony. I don't know what's going on with the team. He's got good lap times and he's gone faster here than he's ever gone before. And whatever, we've heard the lap time stories, but the bottom line is the results haven't been the same. And I don't know why that's how it is, but I think it's way too early to stick a fork in the guy and say he's done, because I just don't believe that's true, because I just think he's a fighter. And I think when he's done, he'll actually realize he's done and be done. So
Yeah, I think he's going to figure it out. You're right. It seemed like in the past it almost didn't matter where he started on the grid. Even right from the green light, he would be able to get that jump off the line and be right amongst them, like you said. And it seems like there's some he's chipping away. There's some improvements. He's moving forward a little bit now. The starts aren't as lightning fast and crazy like he used to be able to do them. But it seems like they're gonna figure it out at some point here. And at first it seemed like, well, geez, by comparison, Bobby Fong's been going unbelievably well with a win under his belt already and things. But he was on that team for a year in the past, before, even though it was on Supersport. So he just is acclimated a little bit more to that team than Tony has been. So I think you're right. I think Tony's going to come on at some point here and be more of a factor as we go on.
what's funny is I would always give Cameron a little bit of crap, because I'm like, okay, he would be able to do these blistering fast laps at the end of the race, and a lot of times still come up short or what have you, but he always had the speed. I don't think he had, like I said earlier, I don't think he had the exact same confidence in the motorcycle that he has now. So maybe
Yeah.
he was a little bit leery of going to the limit all the time on the bike, and he did have some crashes. But what's funny is, like, he used to get like not very good starts, and he'd always be third or fourth, and then he's like third or fourth for the entire race, and then he'd get up to second, and then he'd be racing Tony, and he'd either beat him or he wouldn't. Well, now he just seems like right from the start he's freaking gone. You know, it,
Yeah, it's
it's
funny.
a huge
I had talked
turnaround.
to Wayne about the fact that he said, we know, I can't think of which race it was, where it was, but last year there was one point where I think it was the final lap of the race, he ran his fastest lap.
Mhm.
And I remember Wayne was I talked to him recently about this, and he was like, that just shouldn't happen. There's no way that a guy can go at the fastest they went on tires that old at the end of a race. It means that he wasn't going as fast as he could have gone earlier in the race. So now he's got that. He's doing that. He's not. Oh, I guess I better pour it on now. So
No, now he looks like he's just putting in, and I don't even want to say maximum effort, because I think he's got a little bit in reserve. But I think before, maybe there was times when he kept too much in reserve, and couldn't, and ran out of time. But now, I mean, he's just from the drop of well, I guess it's a green light. It's not a flag, but from the time that light turns green, he's just on a mission, and he's just gone. And I mean, no
yeah, and
better
it's
way to make
still
a statement than that.
yeah, and even still with that though, the kid races so effortlessly, or seemingly effortlessly. He's so smooth on a bike. Roger Hayden has pointed that out. It's just his style is so. It just looks like he's not putting a lot of work into it. It just flows for him so well, and you know what? He's working hard, but sometimes it just looks like it's so natural.
He just has a lot of talent. I mean, the kid, he
Yep.
could roll out of bed and just go fast. And I think he
Yeah.
can roll out of bed and do anything that he sets his mind on really well. And, that nothing pisses you off more than somebody that does that, especially when you're busting your butt every day. And this guy just rolls out of bed and kicks your ass. But he's just one of those guys. I mean, he's just got a ton of ability, and it's natural and it comes easy to him. And he's a smart guy on the motorcycle as well. He makes the right decisions 99% of the time, and he puts himself in the right spot, and he doesn't make many. And this year especially, I mean, he made that mistake at Road America, but he doesn't hide from it. He just really says, yeah, I hit that bump and it was a mistake and it was stupid and I paid for it and now we move on. So
Yeah. Hey, so let's talk about Supersport here a little bit because boy, it wasn't too long ago. For sure I think we were thinking this, but a lot of fans were thinking, oh, Bobby Fong won that championship and is moving up, and PJ Jacobson's no longer in that class. What's going to be left out of Supersport? There's not, Sean Dillon Kelly is kind of about all that people were saying. Well, lo and behold, look what we have going this year. It's as exciting and action packed as it's ever been, and you've got three riders and even four and five, but certainly those top three with Richie Escalante, Sean Dillon Kelly, and Brandon Posh are really doing a good job this year, fighting hard. And we'll see what happens if it comes to any kind of personality conflicts, but so far they're racing close, and it's been really good to see. And it's like, hey, lo and behold, maybe Supersport's not a dead class after all.
yeah, I think the super sport class has been really fun. It's good to see guys riding. I think those three guys are riding as hard as they can. Uh, and so far Richie's just he's just been on point with the whole thing, and it's I don't think we've seen the last of Sean Dillon Kelly by any means. I think he's going to win some races. I think at this point Richie's going to be difficult to beat in as far as the championship, but he can also be pushed into mistakes. I mean, he's made mistakes before, and they're all capable of making mistakes. I think if you're Sean Dillon Kelly, you just got to keep pouring on the pressure and trying to win some races, which he's obviously trying to do. I think Brandon Posh, um, on Sunday at Pittsburgh, that was as close as he's been as far as like being in the battle and making passes. And okay, it was with Sean Dillon Kelly and Richie was up the road a little piece, but still they battled, and yeah, I think that class will go to the very end, and it's obviously exciting. And I'm also impressed with some of those guys that are uh, that are behind those three, because a lot of those guys have made
Mm-hmm.
huge improvements. Like, I think Kevin Olmedo, for example. I mean, he's impressive. Um, Benjamin Smith, Jason Aguilar. There's a
Yep.
lot of these guys that you think of as being a step below, that I think I haven't looked at the lap times. I haven't looked at the races and compared them to before, but it seems like they're getting closer. And they've those guys have all either made the next step or are on the verge of making that next step, where they can run that pace and run it comfortably and not fall down. So it'll be fun.
Yeah, it's a good development class for sure. Well, it's development for Superbike. It's certainly a top class for our series, but you can see how it leads to Superbike and things like that. But yeah, to your point about Benjamin Smith and Jason Aguilar, um, they really, and Kevin Olmedo too. Those guys are really kind of stepping up, and I think they're just going to continue to move forward, and we'll see it as it goes. But I mean, we've heard some things. I might as well mention it. We've heard some things about Richie and the fact that he's got that ZX6R. I know fans sometimes say, okay, it's 636 cc's. But by the same token, it's kind of it's like uh, it's he's riding that bike better than anybody's ever ridden that motorcycle before. It's been around for 5 years, and it is a Graves Motorsports prepared bike, which we know they have a heritage of success. So for a lot of reasons. It's not just a little bit more displacement from that thing. So I'm gonna just come out and say that. I'm sure you agree.
Yeah, I think it's just one of those. It's
Oh,
one of those things that the dog days of summer over there, isn't it, Sean?
sorry, Paul. I gotta let my dog out.
I'll just keep talking.
Sorry, Paul. I always know when the UPS man comes to the door. For some reason, my dog doesn't like the color brown, I guess. So
What about is he
anyway,
okay with he's
sorry.
okay with FedEx?
No, he doesn't like red, white, and
Okay,
blue
so
too
it's
much
not the
either.
brown. It's
I
just
think he likes
strangers coming to the door with a box is what he doesn't like.
Yeah, it's the packages. He thinks, oh, it's more stuff for us and not any stuff for him. So
Right.
anyway, sorry about that rude interruption by Bennington, my special dog.
But anyway,
Go
what
ahead.
I was saying is, I think it's just, I think it's right now that team it's a good rider, it's a good motorcycle. I think Richie's got a good crew. They know what they're doing. I think that motorcycle's been developed, by the Graves crew. They with AFM last year with Valentin de Beest riding it. I mean, I think they've done their homework and they've kind of slid in with the bike. And like I said, I think I'm still of the belief that that most of the job is done by the rider and not necessarily the motorcycle. I think you have to have a good motorcycle, obviously, and you have to have a good crew. But I mean, I'd hate to take anything away from Richie and his performances this year based on what people say about the motorcycle. And again, I think both motors. I think all three of those brands will end up winning races this year. And you know,
Yeah, I do
there's
too. I think it's pretty
there's
balanced.
definitely parity there still. So I'm not it's not a concern to me.
Yeah, no, I don't think so either. Let's get in some conversation about a couple of the other classes too. Let's talk a little bit about Liqui Junior Cup, just because they were interesting races. Rocco won both of them. He won every race he got involved in, and I guess we've pointed this out before. Cameron won both his races. Richie won both his races. Rocco won 3 races that he was in. But with regard to Junior Cup, it was interesting. There were some things that happened, a couple incidents on the track, and couple of the riders went down. But from what we've been able to find out, everybody is okay. Uh, I think Dominic Doyle, when he had his little situation there where he caught the edge of the track and, unfortunately went into some other riders. Those other riders were okay. And Dominic was a little beat up, but you talked to him, didn't you, Paul? And he was
Yeah,
okay.
he was okay. I think he
Yeah.
made a mistake, obviously trying to come back where he did, but it didn't sound like that was his original plan. And he was trying not to crash on the grass, and just a few things went wrong and kind of put him in a bad spot. But that was definitely those are the kind of crashes that scare me when guys are hitting each other and running over each other and stuff. It's you expect bad things to happen, and in that case, everybody got up and pretty much walked away, and most of them were just back racing again. So it's it was one of those
Yeah.
things. It was fairly horrific to watch on TV for people and all that, but just goes to show the protective gear that they have now, and the precautions that everybody takes with it is works pretty well, because that might not have turned out as well if it was 20 years ago.
Yeah, and I wanted to give an update on Isaiah Burleson too. He had a couple incidents in that Sunday race, and the first one was mostly okay. He kind of lost control of the bike, but used another rider as a berm and sort of kept it upright and made a miraculous save on that. But a little while later, he had another crash, which was tough because you could see him on the ground and he was conscious because he was writhing around like crazy. So you knew something happened that he wasn't happy with. And I think we were all like, wow, leg, femur, something like that. And, I was wondering, just by the way he was kind of doing something, he looked like he might have hurt his tailbone. And it turned out that was the case. I'm definitely not a doctor, but I sometimes play one on TV, and I had diagnosed him with a possible fractured coccyx, but it turned out that he thought the same thing, and it wasn't the case. He bruised his tailbone,
Mhm.
and he thought he fractured his pelvis, but I got a update from him today. He's back home in Arkansas, and he said he just bruised it real bad to the point where it's painful for him to even move. So he's kind of been bedridden a little bit, but nothing broken, no internal injury or anything. So it's just a matter of this bone bruise and healing up from that a little bit. So he's back on the mend and everything's fine
Well,
there.
I'm glad his
So
toxic isn't
um,
broken.
Yeah, for anybody that's ever seen Napoleon Dynamite, that was always a kind of a funny line in that when Uncle Rico said something about your grandmother or whatever broke her coccyx. So it's like, okay,
Well, I think what happens in
but
that case, probably, I mean, when you hit your tailbone like that, you definitely get the wind knocked out of you. So I'm sure that was probably the most painful part initially, at least, because he probably couldn't breathe. But it's good to hear that he's
yeah.
healing up, and sounds like we'll see him again, as maybe even as soon as the Ridge.
Yeah, and while we're on the subject of that, and you speak about having the wind knocked out of them, for the viewers who saw our racing on TV or on Live Plus and saw the situation that happened to Max Flinders when he had a crash, he went over. He was on the side there, and he sort of lied back down for a little bit, and you wondered what was going on. Well, he had the wind knocked out of him. He had a few other things happen. He slammed his hand pretty good, and he got a pretty good rash on one hip, I guess, one cheek of his butt, but it was mostly that the wind was knocked out of him. He had to kind of lay back and catch his breath. And you're right, Paul. That's probably what Isaiah Burleson's situation was as well. But it was, it's a technical track. It's tricky. It's got a lot of turns in it. It's got a lot of elevation change. So it's not, they're not just riding around out there. And Junior Cup, of course, I guess you could argue they're the least experienced riders that we have, and things happen sometimes. But to your point about the safety equipment and what they have out there, they're mostly kept in good condition for as action packed as our series is. And quick on Stock 1000, let's just talk about that a little bit too. We're seeing some of these riders who weren't competing in Stock 1000 and Superbike Cup now choosing to do that. And one of them we were kind of off and on about whether he was going to do it or not. But Alex Dumas he's 18 now, so he's old enough to race in Superbike, and he moved up and tried that out a little bit. And that kid's development curve is just unbelievable. He's doing the same thing, it seems like, that he did last year when he went into Twins Cup and took a few races to figure things out and ended up winning the championship. And I'm not saying that's what's going to happen this year, because Cam Peterson is certainly going well, but and Corey Alexander and those guys. But Alex is starting to make some noise in Stock 1000, and he got some experience in the deep end with Superbike. So that was nice to see.
Yeah, I mean, that kid's really, he's obviously talented and he's smart and he does the right thing. He doesn't throw the thing down the road all the time. It seems like I don't want to say baby steps, because they're by no means baby steps. They're pretty big steps, but he takes them when he feels comfortable taking them, and then he hangs out there for a bit, and then he takes a few more. He's always going in the right direction, and like I said before, he's not damaging motorcycles or hurting himself to try to get to those steps, which leads you to believe that he's comfortable when he does make the step, like he's not riding over his head. But those guys now in Stock 1000, Cameron Peterson said it in the press conference, and I think Corey said it. They're all impressed with how quickly he's starting to get to grips with riding the big bike, and they know for the rest of the season, from Saturday on out, when he was racing for the lead, they know that he's going to probably be a factor, for the rest of the season as far as racing for victories. And it's only a matter of time before he gets one. And then, as he's shown in the past in the other classes, once he gets one, he sort of likes it and runs with it. I don't think he's going to have, it's not going to be and I don't want to say Twins Cup racing was easy for him last year, but I think by the end of the year, he pretty much had a handle on those guys. I don't think he's going to get a handle on these guys like he did with that class, but that's because it's a pretty big step to that class. And there's, Cameron Peterson's a talented kid, and Corey Alexander, there's not a lot of slouches in that class. So whatever he gets from here on out, he's
No.
definitely going to earn.
Yeah, and I mean, Cam Peterson, it was great that after the problems that he had at Road Atlanta one weekend later, it seems like they solved a lot of them, or at least they've mitigated them a little bit, and they may still be there, but he's at least able to run fast laps, and his brakes seem to be working pretty well, and he ended up getting the 2 wins. So that was terrific for him to, happy to see him do that. I mean, we love all our riders. They all have great personalities. Corey Alexander is another one, but certainly Cam, with the dues he's paid over the years with what he's done. It's nice to see him in a class where he's one of the front runners, and as long as his equipment holds up, he's being able to show his talent. So that's a pretty awesome and exciting thing to
Yeah, I
see.
think the kid deserves a break. I think he's struggled for various reasons, but he's just really talented and he's really fast. And I mean, I honestly believe if he was on a good bike, a good superbike, I think he's perfectly capable of running in the top five at a superbike race right now. So I mean, he's definitely good. Um, but yeah, you would like to see just the pieces fall into place for him. So at least that if he doesn't win the championship, at least make it so that it's the kid's fault and not some outside force that's kind of kept him down. But it's always good to see him do well. He comes from a great family, and I know you have good feelings for his dad, like I do. Um, so yeah,
Yeah.
it's nice to see, and it's like all those guys. You just want them to do the best they can, and everybody get through the thing, and have some good luck, and not too much bad fortune. It's always it's nice to see him battle, and it's nice to see the guy who wins deserves to win, and the guy who gets second comes back, and maybe he gets him the next time. So I think that class is going to be have mixed results as we go forward, and I think PJ Jacobson is going to come back, and obviously he's not going to he's going to want to come back in style and start winning races again, and he's perfectly capable of that, as he's already shown. So I think that class will just get more interesting as we go forward.
Yeah, I'm glad you mentioned PJ because he was, even though he wasn't riding, and Jake Lewis rode his bike in actually in Superbike because Jake couldn't ride in Stock 1000 based on his positioning last year when he was with the Yosh team. So he had to race that bike in stock trim, but in Superbike. So anyway, it was nice to see. I found out that PJ was there, and it was actually his birthday. I went over and got to see him and talk to him a little bit, but you could tell he's still healing up from some of the burns that he got from his situation up at MotoAmerica. And you can tell why he's not racing. I mean, there's a couple of things there. Not only is it uncomfortable to move around on the bike, but should something happen and he went down, I mean, he's got these burns on his areas of his body, and when you get those, it's like blisters or whatever, and you don't want to have anything happen with that infection or whatever. The other person I want to mention too before we kind of talk about Twins Cup real quick here is Travis Wyman. It was nice to see him on the podium. I know that's a new bike for him, and people are always seem to be harping about the fact that why doesn't Scheibe Racing have the new BMW? Well, sometimes the new bike has a few more teething problems than a bike that you've worked on and developed quite a bit. And I know Scheibe has had some things here and there too, which is kind of part and parcel of racing. But it's good to see anyway that Travis is starting to make some inroads and they're developing that bike. And certainly that's going to be a good bike for him to ride. And I'm glad to see that brand up and he got on the podium too. So that was nice. Well, boy, we've already gone like 42 minutes, Paul, but let me just jump. Let's just say a couple things about Twins Cup. I was disappointed with the fact that Chris Parrish wasn't able to come up. I mean, he's a past champion in our series, and he wasn't able to be at Pittsburgh because the bike that he's riding a Yamaha this year, which Andy Palmer with AP Moto Arts is working on, and they've got the bike tuned to the point where it's kind of hard to hold the thing together. Literally, it's almost virtually a grenade. And they had engine problems at Road Atlanta, and because we raced the weekend right after that, they just couldn't get the bike ready and the engine built in time for him to come up. So we had to sit out. And it's the first time Chris hasn't raced with us since we started the Twins Cup class. He's not only a bit of an elder statesman, but he's very very loyal to racing in the class. But Rocco got the win in that, and that was nice to see for him. I mean, to have 3 wins going into his debut in Red Bull MotoGP Rookies Cup, which is coming up next weekend, I believe, in Austria, or this weekend, I should say. Yeah, this weekend. So that was kind of cool for him to go with that dominance of winning essentially 3 races on the weekend. But I wanted to ask you about Twins Cup a little bit, though, Paul, in closing. I'll try to make this quick, but they're saying this started out as sort of these Twins bikes are very popular in club racing around the country in different regions. And so what we did is we said all these guys that are racing these bikes in club racing come and race in a national series that goes from one end of the country to the other. And it started out where, it's a bit of a hot rod class. Guys are trying to figure out how to do some things to the bikes. And, they've moved forward. The lap times are a lot faster now. You've got teams like Team Hammers involved in that series now. So, it's being recognized as something that's not just, club racers that are in our series. It's a legitimate class now. But they've got to the point where they've done so much work on those bikes that the dependability factor is a bit of an issue. And I know some of the teams and riders are wondering, have we gone too far? Should it be limited by possibly horsepower in some way? It's being discussed within the teams and riders, nothing officially with us in MotoAmerica. But, what do you think about that, Paul? I mean, it seems like it happens with everything where we humans always are trying to go faster and make things, perform even better, but sometimes there's a cost to it.
Yeah, I think I've I've seen it a lot where the comfort level just goes down, I guess you could say. You start the series with some older guys and their bikes, and like you said, there's some club racers, mostly club racers, and it was a kind of a tuners class and this and that, so they could all, pretty much do anything they wanted to the motorcycles. And then things kind of change a little bit. I hate to see that it gets more serious, but it does. It gets more serious. Suddenly bikes that are winning the races are getting taken out of semis instead of the back of a pickup truck. And the whole professionalism of the class kind of evolves a little bit. And then you get younger guys in there. I'm not going to say hungrier, but they're guys trying to go somewhere, and it pushes some of those veterans down the order a little bit. It just kind of changes things and maybe takes the fun out of it a little bit for some of those guys that are, they were buddies and they went racing with their buddies and they were able to race in that class. So
Yeah, Paul, what it reminds me of, I know you remember several years ago, single cylinder motorcycles were kind of a bigger deal in racing, and they had sound to singles in some way all around the world. And, you started out, you'd see SR 500s or SRX 600s or, things like that. Then you'd start seeing those Ducati, monos, that 500, and some of those singles were just absolutely developed to the hilt, and they were so crazy expensive for a one cylinder motorcycle, but they had everything on them, titanium, this, that, and the other thing. And it was the same kind of thing. It was a simple concept, a simple formula that turned into this massive thing with all kinds of crazy stuff, because people are just trying to be faster than the other person. And one of the ways to do that is just, put crazy parts on it, or, bore it out, or, get it to the absolute hilt of what it can put out, which is at the expense sometimes of durability or too much heat in the engine. And that seems to be happening in
yeah,
Quinn's Cup
and you're
quite a
not
bit.
going to be able to stop people from building things as to the best of their abilities, and you're not going to be able to, and you're not going to stop teams from wanting to get the best rider. So in turn, you end up with the best rider on the best bike, and sometimes that leaves the other guys behind. So, and I think that's kind of where we're at. But I mean
Yeah,
that's motorcycle racing. That's any kind of racing. It's just going to happen.
definitely that for sure. But hey, so that was all five classes at Pittsburgh International Race Complex. We didn't talk about Mini Cup by Motul too much, but they were there, and there was a lot of good racing from those kids as well. I didn't get a chance to go over there, but I know you did and got to see some of them over there. You want to say anything about that? What you saw over there?
That it amazes me when I see, like, Junior Cup is the same way. I watch those kids race motorcycles, and you don't think of them as being little kids. And, and
Right.
when I see some of those quote unquote little kids, and they're like, you know, in their street clothes, riding their scooters around, you're like, holy crap, they're little kids. And the maturity level is just so high when they're on the motorcycle, and the way they race together, and with how confident they do things, and 90% of the time they do the right thing. It makes them, it just, you can't realize that they're just little kids. And it's even more so when you go over to the mini cup and you're watching these guys ride around on little bikes, so the sizing looks normal. And then when they take their helmet off, it's a little 9-year-old kid, and you're just like, holy crap, how do they do that? But it, it's just starting early.
Yeah, it's pretty cool. And then we've got a couple weekends off here before we go to our next roundup at the Ridge Motorsports Park in Shelton, Washington, and that's the final weekend for Mini Cup by Motul. So those guys will be essentially doing 2 rounds in a row with us, which is really cool that they're going to wrap it up. And I'm sure that what's going to happen next year is that's going to expand. It just seems like it's so popular that they are probably going to figure out a way to get it at more rounds. Maybe not all of them, but certainly expand it to more events than they had this year with the 3. But it's cool to see.
Yeah, it's a
Really
good
cool
little
to see.
series, and I'm sure it'll expand. And who knows? That might be where there's probably a potential world champion somewhere in that pack of little kids, which is will be kind of fun to watch.
That's right. Well, I guess we better wrap it up here. So I'm gonna say, thanks to our fans for listening to the podcast, and please subscribe to MotoAmerica Live Plus, our popular subscription streaming service, and also don't forget to get your race weekend tickets. And you can go to MotoAmerica.com for complete details on that. For our rounds that are remaining in this season, there's only one that we know is for sure not going to be able to have spectators, unfortunately, and that's at the next round at the Ridge, which will be, we'll be covering it on TV. Our TV has been fantastic this year, and certainly Live Plus is the way to pretty much be there at the track without actually being there. So we hope fans will continue to enjoy that, and new subscribers will get involved. But thanks, Paul. We always have fun when it's just the 2 of us on here, and we went longer than we do with most of our guests. So we certainly like to talk
I
to
can't
each
blame
other,
them for the length of this since they weren't here. So yeah, thanks for participating, and I'm actually kind of looking forward to this weekend not seeing you.
Yeah, I'm sure you are. Unfortunately, my wife doesn't have the same advantage. She's going to have to put up with me this weekend.
Probably.
So,
It's funny because her and I have a lot in common, because one of us is probably always screwed by having to hang out with you.
Yeah, if it's not her, it's you. Exactly.
That's right. All right. Well, you have a good rest of your week.
You too, Paul. Thanks.